Today I'm going to show you guys how to set up your GT-1000 with a real amp in 5 cable method.
Hey dude, don't you mean 4 cable?
No man, I meant 5 cable. Let's go. Hey, hope you're all doing well. So this is a video I've been meaning to do for a very long time. It's finally getting done. So obviously there are a few ways you can use your GT-1000 as a standalone unit with the amp modeling, which sounds great. Or if you own something sick like this, you can incorporate this into the system. You can just plug straight into the input and use all the effects inbound. But what about those reverbs and delays? You don't really want them going into a dirty amp. It's going to sound kind of wrong. So you want those to go into your effects loop, and that's what that's about. Let's set this up. All right, so let's work our way across the GT-1000. Input, that's going to be for your guitar. So this end goes into the input, and the other end is obviously going to go into my guitar when I'm ready to play. Cable number 2, put one end into the left mono output on the GT-1000, and the other end is going to go into your return on the effects loop on the amp. Cable number 3, let's put this one into send 1 on the GT-1000, and this end is going to go into the input on the amp. So it's going to go over the front and click, it's plugged in. And cable number 4, one end is going to go into the return of the GT-1000 and the other end to the send on the effects loop on the amp. But hang on, didn't I say 5 cable method before? Yes, I did. So obviously I have nothing plugged in just yet, but there's a foot switch on the amp. Here's the foot switch that came with my amp, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use this. You do need this kind of cable that's got the 3 rings, or the extra ring on there, which is TRS. Plug that into the foot switch on the amp, and the other end is going to go up here into amp control on the GT-1000. So now channel switching is going to be controlled from here. You don't need an extra foot pedal because you've got this amazing thing doing everything for you. Rock on. Let's check it out. All right, so before you start just plugging in and hammering away, there's a couple of things you need to do in the GT-1000 to make this work. So this patch I had already made. Now you can see straight up, I've turned the amp block off. That's because I'm using a real amp. You don't want to double up on the amp side of things. You need to send and return number 1 on, because of course that's what we plugged into on the GT-1000. And then if we travel all the way to the end, obviously we have the cabinet simulation in the GT-1000. You can currently see it is on, but we don't want that because we're using this cabinet. What you need to do is come to your menu, and then you need to select the appropriate output. So currently it says recording, meaning that the cabinet block is going to be on in the GT-1000. So then, as you can see, they've included a whole bunch, and the one that's going to match the closest to what I'm using is the GT-1000 4x12 return, because that's where my output is going. Remember, we came from the output of the GT-1000 into the return of the amp. So I'm going to select that. Now, if I close this, come back to here, you can see these have all been grayed out, which means that the cabinet is off inside your GT-1000. Now, from this point onwards, you should be good to plug in and start making some noise. So let's go completely from scratch. I'm going to turn off the EQ and I'm going to turn off the noise suppressor. So there is nothing in this chain so far. Now, if I've done this correctly, I turn this amp on, we're going to get some noise. Now, I am using the tube amp expander so I don't completely blow my face off, but it's out of the equation. It's there just passing the signals through, so just ignore that one. Oh, there we go. All right, cool, it worked. So there we go, straight up. My output level on the GT-1000 here is currently at, what clock is that? 10 o'clock. And that's the volume, which is bugger all. Oh, nice. There we go, it's all cabled up correctly and it's working. So before I do anything, I want to sort out this amp control, pedal number 5. So if I come into my control here, assign, edit that one. You want to change this one to amp control. Now for the record, that is 4th from the bottom. Minimum off, maximum on. The source is going to be pedal number 5. And it's going to be toggle. Also, the other thing that I forgot to mention is that you do need to turn the amp control on. So you want to scroll all the way across to your master, and you can see here it is here. You have a listen, as I turn it off, you'll hear a click in the unit. and my amp changed. So I've turned it on. Now if I press that number, so it's backwards, but that's okay. So white means clean, no light means dirty. Oh, it's also a delay, so I must have that assigned somewhere as well. There we go. So I had number 5 assigned to the delay there, but I'll just turn that off for the moment. I'm going to change the number 5. So it's going to be green, and then the off value, because I'm going to be going heavy, is going to be red. So now when I press it, red for heavy, green for pretty. Perfect. Cool. All right, so we're set up. Completely dry. Fantastic. It is pretty noisy, so that's why I had this noise suppressor on. Now, at the moment, I've ended up, this output level has been pushed to about 1-ish o'clock. So obviously, the more output you've got here, the harder it's going to hit the front of your amp. So adjust that one accordingly. It's going to be sort of about where you're happy with it. I don't have an exact number for you. My speaker out on the tube amp expander is about 1 o'clock as well, and the output master and the lead master is sort of 5 and 6 on the amp. If that's any representation, which it probably isn't. So you want to come in, I'm going to turn on the noise suppressor now, and nothing happens. Oh, because it's before it. Lol. There we go. So this noise suppressor, yeah, essentially is in the effects loop of the amp. So of course, I'm plugged into the input of the GT-1000. So the start of this chain works just like the GT-1000 normally would. So this send and return block, let's just treat that like that's our amp. Anything before the amp is going to be like your overdrives, and if you like your modulation effects there, then by all means pop them there. So all of these compressors, overdrives here that we've got, that's where they're going to be. Afterwards, we want to put our delays, our reverbs, those kind of effects. I personally like my chorus in a loop, so that's where that's going to go today. So to backtrack, the signal comes through here, hits the pre-effects, goes into the front of the amp, then we go from the send of the amp, we come back in to the GT-1000, we get our delays and our reverbs, then it's being sent back out from the send of the GT-1000, it's going into the return of the amp and back out through the speaker. So let's get some ambience. Let's get my Terra Echo, the favorite. It's not mine, it's everyone's. There's the Terra Echo. Fantastic. I'm going to turn the output on the GT-1000 down a little bit. I think it's hitting the clean channel a bit too much. I'm going to change this back to something less intense, just a plate. Whoa, that's a big plate. Just a little bit of reverb there. Still too much, but that's all right. Let's make that 10. So what if I wanted some delay now? Now I've got delay mapped to both of these buttons. Awesome, it's my master delay. What's in there? A tape. Sounds fine. What about now for some chorus? Number 3. Mad. So as you can hear, everything everything works the way it's supposed to. So when it comes to the amp control and channel switching, the Silver Jubilee only has the 2 essentially channels, so you can only sort of change from clean to heavy, or you can pull and then change between those 2. So what I would do is I would set up a lead boost on the GT-1000. So rather than putting a distortion beforehand and hoping it gets louder, bring an EQ into the loop. Now you can see I've got a 4K boost there. That's going to help the guitar cut through a mix, but quite simply, just give yourself a little bit of a boost at the end there. Now if I go, let's go heavy channel. So there's a 3 dB boost, as well as the 3 dB boost at 4K. For a lead boost, what I'm going to want is the master delay to come on, the EQ to come on, and the distortion to come on. So we do need to edit and quite simply just have the other ones match the exact same values that you've just set up. Control 1, Control 1, Control 1. All right, so that's the wrong EQ. Let's just go back, change this one to EQ number 1. So now when I press Control 1, you'll see the distortion, the EQ, and the delay all came on. There's so many ways you can go about setting this up to suit your way of playing. Now, luckily, the output is not going to change unless you come in here and manually select it to be the cabinet block instead of the amp return. So you're not going to have any mistakes there. Just be careful that you don't bank up and down into a patch that includes an amp, because that's going to go terribly wrong for you. So at the very least, I would probably move these, or I'd make a few patches around the one that I'm going to be using the most, so I don't bump it and accidentally fall into a patch that ruins the gig, if you know what I'm talking about. And one last thing to keep in mind is that the output EQ is of course going to affect what happens over this side. So if we listen, so if you're wondering why you're not getting the full response that you normally get from your cabinet, just check your output settings, because you may have this one bumped up a little bit higher than you would on a cabinet which has none, obviously. But you can also jump in and clean it up just a little bit. So most people front of house are going to be doing that sort of thing anyway. So that's a good way to jump in and easily tweak your cabinet tone if you want a better sound on stage or in your room or wherever you're playing. Sick. I hope you guys found that one useful. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned. See you next time.